I don't know about you, but I only trust the best. So if you're looking at getting your roof checked out, redone, these are the guys that can help you. Belter Roofing and Construction, they are the best. They'll come out, do a free inspection. You can trust them with your roof. Call them, Belter Roofing and Construction. 405-952-7777. That's Belter Roofing and Construction.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome to the Jake for the State podcast, and we continue the election campaign theme here with another candidate today. We got Ms. Kathren Stehno, candidate for House District 53. Welcome to the show, Kathren.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I am glad to have you on and look forward to hearing more about you and your story and why you're running, and we'll just dig into it. Why don't we just start with some of your background and what you've been doing the last few years?
Yes. So the past 5 years, I have been at Southwestern Christian University, moving from a professor to the director of teacher education. And before that, I was with the Office of Educational Quality and Accountability, a state agency. I was over the school performance review program. We went all over the state doing performance reviews of school districts. And at that time, I became very aware of school districts that were doing great jobs in their accountability and some that needed further help in that process. Before that, and I retired from OEQA, and before that, I spent 32 years in public ed mostly, but 7 of the years were in private school at the beginning. And I was a teacher in the classroom for 19 years, and I was an administrator for the last 13 years. I was in public education. And I'm a mom, a grandma, or actually a Mimi, I should say, and I have 5 grandchildren. And I've just been in politics since the last 2 years. So.
Okay. Wow. Well, I find your race particularly fascinating. First, I'll tell you why in just a second. First, I want to say that I love that you're there at Southwestern Christian, because I was also there as an adjunct professor for about 4.5 years, and loved the school. I think it's a great campus, great environment there. So my heart is still back there with Southwestern Christian, and it's good to see you there as director of education. But I was saying I find this particular race interesting because of your expertise in education, your time in the public school system, and in light of who you're running against. The incumbent is Representative Mark McBride, who's been very vocal about his opposition. I wouldn't say opposition, but him and Ryan Walters have butted heads quite a few times, and he's been very vocal about disagreeing with some of the positions and drawn a lot of controversy because of that. So I guess let's start this talking about, is a reason you're running, does that have anything to do with your running in this particular race? Are there things you're seeing with Representative McBride that you would like to do differently?
Well, so this is Mark's last term, so he actually is not running. So,
okay, I didn't realize he was terming out. Okay,
yes,
that's
he's
good.
Terming out, and so when I began the journey 2 years ago, I joined it because I did not like how Mark was going. I felt he was leaving the Republican standards of what we stood for. And so, and we had actually communicated with him a few times to let him know, that we were not real pleased, and that didn't seem to deter him. So we, excuse me. So, so then I was approached and encouraged to join in on the race in 2020. I mean
Okay.
2022. Yeah.
What were you seeing back then that concerned you?
Um, that he was following OEA quite a bit. He was allowing a lot of influence from OEA, and I have never been a union person. I know some people really thrive and like it, but my problem with it is that it is tied to so many um, different organizations, such as Planned Parenthood. It's tied to many things that I feel are not consistent with a conservative values.
Yes,
So,
and I want to dig into that about what it means for you to be a Republican and these conservative values that I completely agree that so many with an R beside their name have abandoned. First, I do want to drill down on what you just mentioned, just for clarity and help our listeners understand that. In what way are unions connected to organizations like Planned Parenthood?
so OEA is connected to NEA and the National Education Association. They are a big contributor to Planned Parenthood, and I feel that um, a lot of teachers that are part of OEA don't realize their money goes straight to NEA and uh, goes into all of those liberal organizations. They even supported BLM. I mean, the list goes on, really, of things that they support that are absolutely contrary to conservative values.
Right, man. So good for people to understand that. Like you said, there may be even teachers listening to this who weren't aware. Maybe they are a Republican or a conservative and they don't want their money going to Planned Parenthood, but they don't realize that if you're part of this union, a big chunk of that may be.
That's right.
So I appreciate that tidbit there. Are there any other candidates in this race besides you?
Yes, there are three others. Um, Jason Blair, who has been a city council person in Moore. That's where our district is. Part of it's in Oklahoma City, but most of it's in Moore. And Heather Voss and Nick Pokorny are all, we are all
Okay.
for.
Okay. So it's a full race there.
It is.
Uh, so what separates you from the other candidates?
I think my number one, I am the oldest of the four, so I think experience. I have a lot of experience in not just education, but experience in from my time at OEQA with a state agency that was created for accountability. Actually, OEQA was the Office of Accountability when I joined it. And then when Governor Fallon did the merging of several agencies, Office of Accountability merged with teacher preparation, the Commission for Teacher Preparation. And when we merged, we became OEQA. And
Okay. Okay.
so that was, I'm bringing that into this whole spectrum.
Yes, exactly. I think it's important for people who are, especially in this Republican primary, for Republicans to know that the selection is truly a Republican because it's so easy. I say this all the time. Chances are you're not going to get elected if you don't have an R by your name. That's well known. So we see a
Right.
lot of people changing their parties to run as a Republican so they can get into office. Doesn't necessarily mean you hold to the party platform. But what does
Exactly.
it mean to you to be a Republican?
Um, it, what it means to me is that Republican values match my values. my values as a Christian. I was raised in a Southern Baptist pastor's home, so I'm a PK, and I went to OBU. I was saved at the age of 12. So as a Christian, I have very conservative values. Republicans have always had conservative values. And so therefore, I go with the party that matches my values.
Absolutely. And we'll get into some of those issues there and to find out where you stand. First, let's lead off with education, because that's where your the bulk of your experience is. You're currently in this role of director of education at Southwestern. And so education has been in the spotlight, especially this year, since Ryan Walters has been very much in the news on a national scope, and then also here locally, of course. And I'd like to get your perspective on what you believe, how you believe he's doing. Are there things that you would like to see him do differently, or do you like what you see coming from the state superintendent?
So, and I've been asked that question every once in a while as I knock on someone's door when I'm out campaigning, and that question has been given to me. So, I am certainly with Ryan on most of his issues as far as getting porn out of the schools. And I can tell you that Dr. Robert Romines, our superintendent and more, he is very proactive in doing the best things for the students and more. We have one of the best leaders in the state. And secondly, definitely getting the woke out of our schools, as far as, our schools need to be about academics. Yes, but we need to be supporting our students in all areas, but not with woke ideology. So I am with him on that for sure. The way his approach is not how I would approach things. I think maybe that might be a turnoff for a lot of people. But his message, I understand and support, but maybe a different way of approaching those that message would be more beneficial.
Okay. So currently we're 48th in the nation. That's the latest I saw in education. And there's been lots of conversation around this, obviously, about how to change that, how to increase testing scores and academic outcomes. What would be your contribution? What do you think we should do as a state to help increase that?
So, number one, we need to change our standards. Our standards are ambiguous. They do not pinpoint. Actually, what we had before the past, I feel like were better standards. They were more precise, understandable. So that for sure needs to happen. And I think our ESSA plan needs to be improved. It needs to actually have more of a conservative approach than what it has during the previous superintendent, Joy Hoffmeister. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She had an ESSA plan that had a lot of the same woke ideology in that plan. And so that plan needs to get changed. And
Can you explain what that is for those out there listening who may not know what an ESSA plan is?
Right. That is the federal government's program for all the title programs. So the ESSA plan, every state has to create one in order to receive the title money. So they have to state how they're going to use title money. And of course, if you get money, you've got to go by their requirements. And so there are ways that you can go with those requirements without having to go woke. And that's probably, that is the biggest problem we have on that one, on the ESSA plan.
Right, which is becoming increasingly difficult to not go woke while meeting those standards in order to receive federal money. It seems like they're more and more wanting to tie federal money to these standards that violate our moral conscience. You know, the recent Title IX rules coming out come to mind. And, of course, Ryan Walters and our Attorney General have said that we're not going to accept those here in the
Yes,
state of Oklahoma.
right.
How do you feel about Title IX rules and then further receiving federal money in general?
I would, it's hard to get off the train once it's going. And once we started accepting title monies from the government way back, I guess it was in the 60s probably, when the DOE, the Department of Education at the federal level, was created. And once that money started flowing in, it's impossible to get off of that train. But we may have to make some very, very hard decisions. The more that train goes in this extremist liberal position, it's such as the Title IX, we are going to have to put the brakes on somewhere, somehow. And if we have to stop taking money in that regards for Title IX, then we need to do so, because we cannot allow our education system to get corrupted by the federal government.
Yeah. Do you believe that here in Oklahoma, what we need is more money? We hear from the teachers, from the schools, that the answer to improving academic outcomes is we're underfunded, so we need more money. And, this is on the heels of the biggest raise in history for our teachers. And so I'm so glad we did that, because I am all in favor personally of making sure our teachers are taken care of. But I'm curious about, from your perspective, do you think we need to do more in that area? Do we need to raise that rate even more? Or do you think we need to focus on something else?
So I would love for us to be able to raise teacher pay even more, but I'm saying that as a person that did school performance reviews of school districts, some districts do not use sound fiscal accounting. They could probably give more to their teachers once they receive funding from the state. They could probably do a better job of funding their teachers. It's a thing of priorities. And so that's my biggest complaint, is that we've got resources out there that some of the districts do not utilize, and they could take some money from some areas and put more into their teacher pay. And that's not all districts. Some districts are doing an outstanding job of trying to fund their teachers, and teachers are satisfied in those schools. But when you're not getting paid what you should be, when admin, not even just administration, but administration support, it's getting paid more than the teachers in some of these districts, small districts, that is just beyond the pale for me. It's just ridiculous.
Right.
And so accountability
Is that something
again.
you think? Is that something you think needs to be handled at the state level or in the district level, the local level?
I think definitely the local level has got to try and make things better for their teachers. Their teachers are leaving because they don't have the money or the support that they need. So I think that districts have got to start looking within themselves and not always looking at the state for solving their problems. And one of the best resources, I'm telling every district, one of the best resources is to go into the Office of Educational Quality and Accountability, into their website, where it has a whole list of school performance reviews that began in 2003 and has gone all the way to last year, 2023. They will find some of the best suggestions for them if they will just look at districts that are similar to them. In fact, we would have peer districts in our research when we did those performance reviews.
So good. Well, I know we could probably spend the rest of this show right here just talking about education.
Right.
But I do want to touch on a few other issues. You know, in the spotlight as well this year, Governor Stitt has called for tax reform. 3 different special sessions called for tax reform. They finally got the state portion, the grocery tax repealed. Yes. He's calling for more. What would you like to see done concerning tax reform in the state of Oklahoma?
So, as you say, we are definitely on the right start in helping out with that. I think looking at Texas maybe might be a good start to see how their tax reforms have how they played out in that state. You know, I always say before we jump into what looks good, sounds good, feels good, we've got to have some solid research. We have got to see, okay, how's this working in other states? You know, how did it pan out before we jump in? But I think the grocery tax is a huge one. And I think we need to just see is that going to help us enough? If not, then how else can we do, solve our taxation problems for our citizens? So.
In Oklahoma right now, there's a big call for SB 426, which would protect Oklahomans from the WHO, the World Health Organization. And, obviously COVID opened a lot of people's eyes to government overreach. Absolutely. And protection from vaccine mandates. Yes. So where would you stand with regard to this as far as a person's right to choose whether or not they get vaccinated, the whole masking discussion, whether a business should stay open? What's your perspective on all that?
I feel like that we as citizens need to be the deciders of ourselves. The government should not be deciding for us. We need to be the ones that decide if we need this vaccine or if we want to wear a mask, which were totally useless. Is when you look at the research, they were not useful at all. We still got COVID. So the WHO is an overreach, and it's part of that global attempt to have that one government, and we need to fight it with all of our might. Oklahoma needs to set up legislation that keeps us sovereign from interference from those kinds of organizations.
What do you think about flock cameras in Oklahoma? We're seeing more of those pop up around in different cities, especially in the metros, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but even in some smaller communities, they're implementing flock cameras. And law enforcement is saying it helps them do their job better, helps them catch criminals. The counter argument is you're surveilling the mass population. And so where do you stand on surveillance?
I am not for that invasive surveillance. I am not, because we should not be treated the same as a criminal. We should not have to go under surveillance. I know it helps them, but how often it doesn't help them? Again, look at the data. How much percentage have they caught someone doing that? And if the percentage is quite low, then we need to do away with it.
Yeah. What if the percentage was high?
If the percentage was high, then we might reconsider, but I doubt that it's that high. So I remain with my statement.
What are you hearing from the people as you're going around District 53? What seems to be on their mind? What are they looking for in their next representative?
Well, and the majority that I have knocked on their door, they're more concerned about the federal government coming in and making life harder to live because of the things that are happening economically. But when they do speak about our state, some are, talking really strong about Ryan Walters, and some are not. And so I'm getting, about a balance, equal balance on that. Um, Other than that, turnpikes. Turnpikes is another issue. Not as much as I thought it would be in my district, considering my district goes to Indian Hills, but it only goes to Sunny Lane, which does not extend past Sooner, which is where, the turnpikes are slated to go. So.
Right, right. Well, this would be something that you would probably look at and vote on concerning Turnpike
Yes.
Authority. So, where do you stand on that? I mean, it's right there in your neighborhood,
Yes, it is.
nearby.
And I think that the two times I have been on the Kickapoo Turnpike, it's a ghost town. There's hardly anyone on that turnpike. I see it as a waste of money. I see another one being a waste of money only for the few that need it. And those few seem to have a lot of, it seems they are being given more credence than the taxpayer. We need to look at what is best for the majority of the taxpayers, not try and enrich those who are building these turnpikes. And why are we still paying for turnpikes that were built a long time ago? I mean, it's like putting money into a coffer, and that coffer has a hole in it, and money keeps going through it, and we never ever see the end to it. And so I think turnpikes we've got to pull back on that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Kathren, a question I'm asking all candidates these days is concerning those things that might influence you both in your election and then carry on and continue to influence you while in office. And a couple of those influencers, especially in the campaign, is your campaign manager and your consultant. Have you hired a consultant for this campaign?
Well, he eats at my house 3 times a day and, puts gas in my car. So my consultant lives with me because he's my husband. So we do, I do not have a consultant. I have a very hardworking retired man who also owns a gun business. And so we are definitely Second Amendment, pro-choice on Second Amendment, and part of OEQA. But God has just given him the ability to be competitive on this. My husband grew up as a farmer, a farm boy, and he competed in cattle shows growing up. So he has that competitive spirit in him. So he's been very helpful.
Good man to have on your team for sure. What's the name of the gun store?
Gun Owl Firearms. Guns, G-U-N,
okay.
Owl, as in wise, using guns wisely.
Okay, Gun Owl
Firearms.
Yes, I like that. Gun Owl Firearms. All right, and so the other influence for our elected officials is obviously the money coming from lobbyists, special interest groups, PACs, and I'm asking candidates, would you be willing to commit to not taking money from lobbyists, PACs, and special interest groups?
Yeah. We are working. Our campaign is funded from money from the last campaign, which was funded by folks that donate to an organization. But so we are funded on that leftover, but it wasn't much left over. So because we didn't get that much in the first place. So we are just,
This was in your campaign, your first campaign against Mark McBride?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we've gotten a few donations just from individuals, and it's very grassroots, very much so.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. And I think it's refreshing for a lot of people to know that your ear is connected to the people, not to the special interest
Yes.
groups.
I learned
And
my
and
lesson.
people want to know
I
that
learned
they're
my
the
lesson on that. Yes.
right. I get it. I know. I learned a lot of lessons too my first time serving, and so you learn this. I found myself sitting at the table these nice steak dinners, and one after another, and eventually you're saying,
Yeah.
why are they spending so much money taking us out? You start learning the game. Okay, and so yeah, you catch on, and my good friend Warren
Yes.
Hamilton, while we were serving together, he said, no, I don't go to those anymore. I did my first year, but I don't
Yeah.
go there anymore. And so when I started seeing men of integrity like him take a stand, I said, and that's when I stopped going myself. But yeah, it's subtle, but it's definitely an influence, and so I think it pulls us away from our connection with the people. So it's good to hear. I appreciate your time here,
Thank
Kathren,
you.
and presenting yourself to the people. That's my goal here, is that people get to know you as the candidate. Is there anything else you would like to say to the people of District 53?
I am your voice. I am not up there. If you vote for me and I win, I am going to continue to come back to the people and hear from you, not from outside interests, but from you, because you are who put me where I will be.
It's good. It's good. And how can people find out
I
more
do
about
have
you
a
and your campaign?
website, Kathren Stehno, the number 4, OK.com.
And that's Stehno,
Yes,
Stehno.
it is.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll be sure to put that link
Thank
in the show
you.
notes, so anybody
Thank
listening to this
you.
podcast will be able to click on that and go check you out. Kathren, I appreciate you and appreciate your time
Thank
today,
you.
and God bless on
Thank
the
you
rest of
so
this
much,
race.
Jake.
You bet. You bet. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to the Jake for the State podcast. And I hope you enjoyed another interview with another solid candidate here in Oklahoma. Of course, there'll be more to come. Primaries are June 18th. Be sure to put that on your calendar. Show up to vote. You gotta vote to have a voice. So that is June 18th here in Oklahoma. But be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you next time.